Hello, my name is Suzette Mack, and I am here to tell you about my experience with writing. So, I've been writing since I was really young. I wrote in my diary at least daily from the time I was about 8 through high school and way beyond that. Today, my diary is mostly digital compared to the many paper journals I've filled in the past. Diaries that often included a variety of pen and ink, chalk, watercolor, and other visual entries. My online diaries today often include photography because I enjoy expressing myself that way. I excelled in English when I was a child. I loved the precision of our writing assignments, and I took a lot of pride sometimes in just making the teacher really proud of me. Particularly loved writing short stories and getting to illustrate them. In college, the first time around when I was at CU Boulder, my major was journalism, until I discovered the world of research psychology and then occupational therapy as I became increasingly interested in the world of medicine. I did not feel it was my calling to be a medical journalist at that time, even though I was being encouraged to do so. But throughout my occupational therapy career, I did my share of medical type writing. This included journal articles, presentations to a variety of audiences, and material for professional organizations that I was part of. My occupational therapy career veered from doing rehab with the elderly to working in a day treatment program in behavioral health for a county mental health center in Kansas City. The focus at that time was a strengths perspective and to quote unquote normalize activities. That meant for people to not show up every day and stay all day at the drop-in center at the mental health center, but instead to be out in the community, to find real friends, to volunteer and even work, which is something really difficult for people who had lived their mental health diagnoses for many, many years. Out of this grew a writing project in which several of us, through a grant through the University of Kansas, wrote a 12-chapter book about recovery from severe and persistent mental health struggles. This book was free to mental health centers and to consumers of mental health across Kansas. It has now been used across the world. Due to demand, we also wrote a book after that that has daily meditations based on the 12 chapters. In 2010, my dad died, and my mom's health started to decline. So I made the move from Kansas City back to our family home in Boulder, Colorado to care for her. During that time, I started writing a crime bulletin for the Boulder County Sheriff's Office. I had been writing one for a few years for the Merriam Police Department, which is the suburb I was living in Kansas City. The writing was technical somewhat, but it was also inviting, as it was based on educating the community and working to bridge gaps of trust between the community and the police. My mom died in 2013, and I moved back to Kansas City the next year. I was totally lost on so many levels due to my grief. I felt like I had lost my identity. In It was I think 2016 or 17, I discovered an online MFA program in creative writing at the University of Texas El Paso, and I applied for that. And I was so excited when I got accepted. I love this program so much. We got to write pretty much whatever we wanted, depending on the class, if it was a poetry class, short story, whatever, but there was a lot of flexibility. I got my completed my thesis in 2020 during the pandemic. It's an autobiography called This Is My Breath. It's the story of my childhood, and writing it gave me a lot of opportunity for healing. I also found that writing creatively like that was such a nice break from doing all the APA style formatting I had had to do in my PhD when I was working on my PhD and also in occupational therapy. So one of my most favorite things that I wrote during my school time at University of Texas El Paso was a full-length movie, and it's about a young girl who discovers that her father's a priest, and I hope to actually complete that someday. So I still write a lot. I'm keeping a journal, for example, of some horrible medical stuff I went through last fall when a surgeon made a near fatal error on me. I write for my job at a church where I'm the communications coordinator, and I have lots of ideas for children's books. And while working on my PhD in counseling psychology, I rediscovered my love of working in the area of grief and trauma. And then I stumbled upon the whole arena of intergenerational trauma. My dad was a World War II vet, and I relate so much to the information I've been learning about this. I can't get enough of it, and I definitely will be using this in my dissertation. So my stumbling points, or at least some of them with writing, are that I hate having to go back through books that were cumbersome to read and to pull out citations. That is just the gruesome truth. Sometimes I'm lazy, and sometimes I'm cynical when it comes to that. Given my own background and the struggles I've had and the struggles I've witnessed, sometimes writing precisely feels unnecessary and sometimes arrogant. People who are all about diversity can also be all about chopping away at diversity when it comes to language, and I struggle with that. I tend to triage stuff in my brain. It's how I think because of my medical background. So, like on the scale of 1 to 10, if a writing has to be a little more individualized and less stylized in order to get the word out, I am likely to be less rigid with the style and help someone get their voice into the world. I will struggle in academia because of this sometimes, and I know that, but I also know that I am living my truth out, which I believe is God's truth about diversity and contextualization with some of this. So I ask for forgiveness ahead of time if I offend anybody through some of my approaches and attitudes. My hope for the future is that my dissertation becomes clear, that I don't burn out when writing it, and that I can stay encouraged under the pressure of my peers. I also hope there will be some allowance for me to offer at least some of my creativity through my work. I am prayerful about all of this, and I hope to keep finding time for my own creative writing to keep me balanced from the not so fun writing parts of my world right now. Thank you so much.